Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair.
and me, Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
In October 2021, something wonderful and astonishing happened. 3 authors, published by small but mighty Windsor-based Palimpsest Press, were nominated for the 2021 Governor General's Literary Awards. Sadiqa de Meijer for nonfiction, G.A. Grisenthwaite for fiction, and Tolu Oloruntoba for poetry. In November, Sadiqa de Meijer and Tolu Oloruntoba were indeed announced as 2 of this year's 7 English language Governor General's Literary Award winners. Today, we're speaking with Palimpsest Press publisher and past guest Aimee Parent Dunn, along with GGLA winning poet Tolu Oloruntoba. Tolu Oloruntoba was born in Nigeria and practiced medicine before his current work managing virtual health projects for BC health organizations. His poetry has appeared in Harvard Divinity Bulletin, PRISM International, Columbia Journal, Obsidian, the Maynard, Humber Literary Review, and elsewhere, and has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize. His short fiction has appeared in translation in Dansk PEN Magazine. He founded Klorofyl, a magazine of literary and graphic art. His debut chapbook, Manubrium, was published by Anstruther Press and was shortlisted for the 2020 bpNichol Chapbook Award, while his debut full-length poetry collection, The Junta of Happenstance, published by Palimpsest Press in spring 2021, recently won the Governor General's Literary Award for Poetry. He lives in Surrey, BC with his family. And Aimee Parent Dunn is from Essex County. She received her BA in English at the University of Windsor. In 2012, she became a publishing assistant at Palimpsest Press, which had been founded by Don Cresson in 2000. And then just over a year later, she bought the press and became its publisher, with Don remaining as a poetry editor and designer. Palimpsest Press is a small, independent publishing house that publishes beautifully designed books of poetry, fiction, and literary nonfiction. A palimpsest, by the way, as we've told you in a previous episode, is a piece of writing material manuscript on which the original writing has been effaced to make room for other writing. Welcome, Tolu and Aimee.
Thank you.
So congratulations to both of you on this historic achievement. This question is for both of you. Where were you and what was happening when you found out that you'd actually won the GGLA for poetry?
I'll take this. They announced it first thing in the morning, and I was at home with my kids trying to get everybody ready and running around doing the daily grind when the news came out. It was pretty exciting. And Tolu?
So being on the West Coast, it was about 3 hours earlier. I guess then Aimee would have found out. So it was announced at about
7 a.m.
Yeah. So
yeah.
You were trying to get my older kid ready for kindergarten and simultaneously get ready for work and so on and so forth. So it was weird. I didn't have a lot of time to be on social media that day because I had to go straight to work after all that. So it's very interesting having to balance the media, requirements of these awards with my day-to-day life, which is full of work and parenting. But it was exciting. I was stunned, especially when I actually heard about the nomination, because I wasn't expecting it. I mean, Ann Carson won the last one. I mean, those are the kinds of people that win these things. So I wasn't even. It wasn't even in the realm of. I wasn't wondering if I could win it. I didn't think I would be a contender. It was like some other people win it, and we read books. that's the way I think. So it was very stunning for me.
And Tolu, it breaks my heart that you can't go to Ottawa for a big fancy schmancy party with lots of great free food to go to, the gala, the usual gala that happens in non-COVID times. But other than that, what does this award mean for you as a writer?
Nice. Well, I like to answer the first part of your comment. I like food, but I don't like fun. So I'm really torn there. If there's food, yeah, invite me. But if there are people, I'll stay at the corner of the room. So, in a way, I'm perhaps a little relieved that I don't have to do a lot of in-person events, especially because I've forgotten how to act around people. To the other part of your question, how does it feel? I think for me, I really, can't really speak for most people, but for me, one of the main reasons why I write is to bear witness. And sometimes it is always very gratifying if other people, bear witness with me or bear witness to what I'm saying or to the perspective that I'm putting out. So a lot of this poetry is written in solitude.
People always think publishing and writing is so glamorous, but really it's just trying to find time to do things with your kids.
Yeah,
working around your kids.
My life is not glamorous at all.
Yeah.
Things haven't changed my life at all. It's just that now I have to do more interviews and stuff, but life has just simply gone on. Still working on my manuscript, still trying to write poems, still trying to keep up with life. But the fact that a lot of this, I think I'm getting my old train of thought back. A lot of this is written in solitude, and sometimes you want that vindication, or I at least want that vindication of having someone else read the work and sometimes identify with it. I feel very fortunate that the book is getting some attention, and so some people can read some of the things I wrote, and that's the reason why we publish, I guess. It's not the reason why I write, but I guess putting it out there means, let's share these thoughts. And I feel very fortunate that a lot of people who discover the work. I feel very humbled as well because hundreds, if not thousands, of books were published last year, and a few were recognized. I mean, prize culture has a lot of valid criticisms against it, but I'm of two minds. I'm happy, but I know that there were other spectacular works that aren't really necessarily getting their day in the sun, as it were. But all in all, I feel extremely happy.
Aimee, Tolu's GGLA for poetry, along with Sadiqa's win for nonfiction and Gord's nomination for fiction, are significant achievements for a small independent press. What does this mean for you and Palimpsest Press?
I think what it means for us is greater recognition on the literary stage. I think that it will bring more authors to us. More authors will consider submitting to us. More authors will be able to solicit authors that we want in particular. Obviously, it meant, some award money, not a great deal, but it meant an influx of revenue for us. I mean, we've sold, oh my goodness, Tolu sold out and we had to reprint. I don't know if you knew that, Tolu. So we're waiting on your second print run to come in right now. For Sadiqa as well, it meant that we can't keep her in the store. She's selling out just as fast as we print her. So talk about your supply chain issues. Tolu's actually at that point too. 7 people are waiting on your book right now and can't get it. But it's meant having to really, forge ahead with getting those books into the stores. And I think that from now on, when our books come across the desk of reviewers, come across the desks of booksellers, they're going to take a closer look, a better look at our work, and before they dismiss it, because they're going to remember this, right? They're going to remember that, no, these people put out award-winning books. Let's see what they're offering us now.
Well, interesting that you mentioned extra print runs and selling out. It's clear that your approach to date is focused on quality over quantity. Do you see Palimpsest Press gradually increasing the volume of releases every year, or do you prefer to continue at this pace for the foreseeable future?
We are increasing. The goal is to get up to 12 books a year. We're currently at 9. Next year should be 10. But no, our goal is to keep growing as a company. Keep putting out more poetry, more nonfiction, more fiction, and really diversify our list, which has been a problem for us in the past. And it's something that we've been working on steadily. And we're just looking towards more growth.
Tolu, I'd like to invite you to go back in time. How and when did you first discover your passion for writing?
Thanks, Irene. How did I discover my passion for writing? I stumbled upon it. I was in the second to last year of secondary school, high school, and I started experimenting with different kinds of writing. I was trying to write fantasy. I was writing fantasy epic with a friend of mine. I started to write poetry, and I somehow just stuck with it. And so that was 2001, and I started writing seriously even before I went to med school, and I just kept writing through it all. And I think it's the thing I have stuck to the longest, professionally or semi-professionally, or I would say it's the endeavor I've been most focused on in my adult life. But I just really stumbled upon it. I've never really been formally trained in literature, but I discovered that I loved it. I just kept doing it.
When you began writing poetry as a teenager, did you have any expectation that all of this would be happening, that writing would be so much a part of your life in adulthood?
Oh, no, not at all. I just wanted some people to think I could write cool poems. And then at some point it became an outlet for me, to process my thoughts, being a teenager at the time. And then, going into a very intense period of study in which, we did things like dissections. We saw people, ill and dying and so on and so forth. I needed to process a lot of my current life. I needed to process a lot of my past life, including past trauma. And poetry I found that every piece I wrote brought me some peace. That is what spurred me on, not necessarily any expectation of broad readership or critical acclaim or anything. So it's been a very solitary vocation for me. I'm glad people like the poems, but I'll have written them anyway.
Well, you mentioned your studies, and that must have been intense in the medical field. And so in addition to your literary endeavors, you do practice medicine, and you're currently managing projects for health authorities in British Columbia. And we are in the midst of a global health crisis, of course. Has the pandemic had any impact on your writing routine or your writing practice, or has it helped or hindered?
Well, for starters, I don't practice medicine anymore. So I sort of switched careers. I practiced medicine for 6 years, and then I went to business school and started doing project management and managing IT projects in healthcare. So I still work in healthcare, and my medical background has continued to be relevant, but I don't actually practice clinical medicine anymore. Long story. But to answer your actual question, the pandemic has actually reduced my ability to write. It has been a very terrifying time, especially for social media devotees, people that spend all their time on social media, just swimming in all that toxin. It begins to become the background hum of one's life, all that devastation and the pain and death. It's very hard to concentrate these days, and one needs a measure of concentration to write. And then when one writes, you're trying not to write about the pandemic and how awful everything is. And so you're like, what else is there to write about? Also, I'm grateful to be able to work from home, but I've lost my commute, and my reading and sometimes writing time. So I would read and scribble notes in my notes app. I don't have that anymore. So now I can only write at like 4 a.m. when the kids don't wake up at 6 a.m. or at like 11 p.m. when I'm already asleep, even though my eyes are open. So it's harder to write. It's harder to read. It's harder to do anything. But I'm grateful that I'm still writing, however little. But it has been a terrible time globally. So I guess I'm fortunate.
Tolu, how does your experience in the medical profession influence the way you write poetry?
Well, that's an excellent question. I don't specifically try to invoke my medical experiences or training, but what they say is write what you know. I'm not even trying to write what I know, but if I'm trying to write an endeavor that I gave a third of my life to so far, a third of my so far short life will show up. A lot of other things show up as well. My memories of childhood and all that stuff. What I'm saying is inadvertently, medicine does come out. And then, there's all that Latin and Greek nomenclature, naming body parts and processes and stuff like that. You get to reverse engineer words because they use these Latin words in very interesting ways. And so I'm dealing more, or I dealt more with the root Latinate meanings of a lot of words, since many of those were retained. And so it influences, I guess, the way I understand and choose to use words. It also, the metaphor of the human body, I'm trying to figure out how the body works. I guess it deepens one's interest in figuring out how everything else works. And the body is really full of metaphors. And since everyone is really, well, most people, okay, I can speak for myself. Since I'm very self-oriented, I know myself. I know my mind. I know my body. My medical training has helped me know more about my body and some of the ways it's failing a bit better. In the lyric poem in which, you dwell a lot on the eye, and, inadvertently you would go into some of the anatomy and some of the physiology and pathology of the human. And some of that rich metaphorical language just comes out. I'm not trying to be a medical poet. I'm not really interested in that, but I can only write out of resources that I have. And that's one of them.
So the Junta of Happenstance is your debut poetry collection, but you have published poetry and authored chapbooks in the past and published one. How did this project come about, and how was the process of preparing a full collection different from your previous efforts?
Well, I have Jim Johnstone to thank. I made several previous attempts to get a full collection published. I actually had a previous deal signed in 2014 that fell through, which I'm very glad it did, by the way. I would have been so embarrassed to have that book out in the world. How did it evolve? Shortly after I moved to Canada, I just continued submitting, this time to Canadian presses, and sent Jim the chapbook that became Manubrium, and he accepted it. Everyone else rejected it. I was very surprised, especially because Jim's book is one of the first that I read when I moved here, The Chemical Life. And I saw how he invoked biochemistry, chemistry, and physiology in talking about mental health. I saw in that something that I wanted to achieve. And so I was hopeful when I sent it to Jim that he would see some similarity in our work. And I'm so glad that he did. And so Jim published the chapbook. Daniel Scott Tistel edited it brilliantly. And Jim asked for a full-length collection after a while. And a lot of poems that were in Manubrium made it into the full-length collection. The process of preparing a full collection was different in that I had the guidance of an editor. I have been putting collections together for a very long time, since at least 2003. A lot of them were terrible and haphazard. But then I had Jim's guidance in this case, in which he would say, why don't we shorten that section? Why don't we move this to that section? I don't feel this poem is quite working. And so I had that trusted guide in the process. I feel very fortunate for it. So that's how it was different this time. I wasn't just putting my poems in a Word document. I was trying to create a coherent document with an expert guide on my side.
Well, maybe this is something for the two of you, because I have a feeling this could be a collaborative thing with a publisher. How did you decide on the title? Tolu, with you and Aimee, did you and the editor work on that as well?
It did have a different title at the beginning.
It did.
I think it was the the Junta of Luck or something you had, and then you changed it to Happenstance.
Yes,
That's better.
Yeah, I felt at some point that the title was ableist, and I got it was the Junta of Dumb Luck, and the dumb luck there wasn't supposed to be the pejorative. It was supposed to be where we're talking about just chance, simple chance. And I started thinking about it, like, will I get canceled if I use this title? And I just asked Jim if we could change it, and we had a number of other options. So trying to find synonyms for that was challenging, but Jim was open to changing the title, and I was glad he was. The eventual title has this haha sound, the Junta of Happenstance. It wasn't planned because it certainly didn't start that way. It's just a happy accident. But yes, it started way different.
I just listen to my editors when they say a title needs to change. There's a reason, right? So you want the book to have, the best title it can have. If I can just quickly talk about Grisenthwaite's book, Homewalds, that had a completely different title when it was submitted. I read the book and I said, okay, but the title of this book is Homewalds. And the funny part being that Margaret Atwood had told him that was a terrible title and that he shouldn't go with that one. So fortunately, he listened to me, and that was the title we went with. And it was the only title for that book. So sometimes, it's a little bit of a challenge to find the right title, but you know when you hit on it, right?
Issues of racism and xenophobia are nothing new, but there has been a resurgence of interest in these topics as a result of recent events. The way life in Canada is experienced by immigrants and particularly racialized people is explored in several of your poems. What might the collection contribute to the necessary discussions on race, racism, immigration, and the other in our society?
Oof. One thing I would say is that I have been a witness to oppression, but I also feel complicit in the oppression that I benefit from. I wasn't fully aware of the history of Canada before I applied for permanent residency and moved here. My fault. I still have done it, but I'll have been more aware. But then I began to become more aware of the fact that, in as much as the trajectory of my life was determined by the British colonial project of Nigeria and what became Nigeria, I was also moving into a colonial phase of my own. And so, yes, of course, I remain an other, like in many of the places I find myself in professionally. I'm the only Black person, etc. I wish it wasn't so, for instance. But I still feel that I am part of the majority on this land, crowding out the original inhabitants. So it's a very complicated feeling. What does poetry have to offer, or what does my poetry have to offer? I approach these issues with humility, in which I'm saying, my people were wronged. My people are currently being wronged. I am wronging other people right now as well. How should I live? How should I live in the present, knowing what has come before? And I grapple with a lot of these, and I think if anyone could take anything from it, I believe it's just the ability to pause and take a second look at where we're coming from, what their presence on these lands means, and what they should do about it. Yeah, but that's how I approach these issues. I ask a lot of questions, and I don't necessarily take anything for granted. And I think it's a useful way to live. And poetry gives us a vantage view into an other's viewpoint. And many people who have been othered write beautifully about their experiences. And reading the poems and sitting with them is a way to develop empathy for those viewpoints and those lives. Because, we live very isolated lives. Many of us never move beyond a few dozen kilometers of, where we have always lived. But you can meet new people. You can change your perspectives. You can see things through another's viewpoint. And I hope my poetry does that. I was just trying to write honestly about the confusion I feel about a lot of these issues. ...
Aimee, what do you enjoy most or find most inspiring about Tolu's poetry?
Every poet I publish is so different, and I loved that he was approaching topics like mental health through that lens, like he said, of the almost medical language. That was something that we had never published before, even though we've had a couple authors who have approached that issue, that topic of mental health. We never actually had somebody who approached it from that lens before. So that's what made his poetry really unique and really kind of jumped out at us. I'm not the poetry person at the press. That's what Jim's job is. So Jim came to me and he said, this is brilliant poetry. And of course I read it and I'm like, yep, it's brilliant. So that's why we chose to publish him. It came at it from such a unique point of view. And I mean, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Obviously, there are some pretty dark topics, but they're expressed in such a way that, it kind of breaks your heart a little, but you want to read more. I guess that's what I really loved about his poetry, was that even though I was feeling all of these really strong emotions, I didn't want to stop reading. I wanted to see where he took me on this journey.
And Tolu, what are you working on these days?
Working on staying alive and keeping my wits about me.
In a literary sense, if you have time and energy for that.
Don't be shy. Tell them about the new book.
Yeah, there's always a new book for some reason. So I'm I'm writing. Oh, you mean next year's book?
Yeah, tell them about that book. I believe your editor was Dion Brand, was it not?
Yeah.
So Dion Brand came to Book Fest, and we all met her, and she was very, very calming and serious. What was it like to work with her as an editor? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm not supposed to be asking questions.
Thank you for the questioning, though. But Dion is a legend. That's not a hyperbole in any sense. So I didn't know how to conduct myself around her. And I felt she would see through the facade and know that I was just, I didn't know what I was doing. But just like with Jim, I had written the manuscript that became Each One a Furnace, influenced by her book Osiris. Shazia Hafiz Ramchi had recommended that I read it. And when I read it, I was struck by a passage within it that spoke about finches. And so I just started writing this flurry of poems. I wrote about 20 poems. So I thought it was going to be a chapbook. And so I emailed Dion and asked her if I could use the phrase from her book Osiris, The Solitary Deaths of Finches, as a title. And I just added, well, if you'd like to read the chapbook to reach your decision about whether or not to allow me to use this, I can send it. She's like, sure, 1, you can use it. 2, you could send it. And then when I sent it, she said, this is interesting. I think it shouldn't be a chapbook. I think you should make it a full book. It's like, no, but I'm done. I don't have anything more to write. But then I took it back for a few more months and wrote added 25 more poems to it. And I sent it to her. And after some time, she said, you should submit this, for our consideration. So it was just a series of miraculous events, because I was going elsewhere. I was going to be something else, but then she prompted me to enlarge the work and enrich the work. And then she edited it. And in editing it, she sharpened it even more, because when she came back with the first edit, I realized I knew nothing about poetry. I was like, I see what you're saying I should do, but I do not have the skill to do it. So I just let it sit for some weeks. I was like, I know what you're saying, but I have no clue how to achieve it. But somehow I was able to follow her guidance to complete the work. So in many ways, I owe the entire book to her, and of course to Shazia. And I wrote it in a time after I'd been laid off. So I had like 4 months. I was just at home and I was applying for jobs and writing. So it wasn't an entirely horrible time since I was able to write, but it was fascinating because she has a very there's that word incisive. She just cuts to the heart of what you need to do. She cuts to the heart of what's unnecessary. And so she's like, no, this word doesn't work. No, this phrase doesn't work, but I like that phrase. No, it doesn't work. So, just very, very incisive. And at the end, she cleaned it very efficiently, effectively, and quickly. And I feel very fortunate for that. And so what I'm working on, I'm not particularly working on it now because it's done. It just needs to go to printers. Final round of copy edits. So I'm looking forward to that. That's one thing I'm doing. Well, but to handle my anxiety, I'm trying to complete another book so that I don't sit around twiddling my thumbs and trying to figure out what comes next. I tend to give very long answers, I find. Sorry.
Oh, it's great.
It's absolutely fine. Yes. So, well, would you like to read a little bit for us from your book? That would be awesome.
The first one I'm going to read is called Coexist. I lived in, my childhood home had a lot of mice and rats. And so Coexist is about coexisting with mice. At some point, it was really their home. We were their tenants. And we just figured out how to live together. So the poem is called Coexist. Africans never presumed to count another's children. So we didn't know how many they had. The family ours moved in with, each sidestepping the other, mostly. Avoidance was respect. Night was their time. The musical clan tap dancing ceiling boards to pipes and winching squeaks from plumbing. Chorus stars above, cosmic dust, pointillist, sifted asbestos below. You would go into their kitchen at night for water and see their conspiracy scattering, snooker balls struck by light. Darting stragglers huffing for the pocket hole. Easy, haven't nibbled their doors under ours. Thoroughfare through the house and gourmet gougings of bread, each mouse hole ornate. Losing their shyness, we occasionally met at dusk. Their whiskers tightrope lances measuring the abyss of air on either side, sifting our intention, teaching the resonance of mice. While the world continues to build ours at the edge, to wrench our microcosm from potential space. Okay, I'll read one that I wrote while we were driving from Pittsburgh to Surrey. So we moved from the States to BC, and we just got a U-Haul trailer and attached it to our Honda and just drove for like 8 days. 8 days because we had a toddler that would just get tired and the trip would end. And so it's called Settlers Effects, because we were allowed to bring settlers' effects, which we weren't taxed on. But I spent the entire trip just thinking about what it meant. Traveled from Pittsburgh, drove through 10 to 11 states of the US. So that's the transcontinental trip, basically. It's given me a lot of time to think. Settlers' effects. Do you ever know if a country is yours? Through heavy lidded skies and crop dust lines, hellish staircases water the horizon. Mileage expands westward. Bugs sheen the windshield. Roadside, raccoons stick in backstroke, and waterless urinals of rest stations have the nail-white bowls that will save the planet. Derricks and horses graze the mass grave of North America. Brochures instructing us to enjoy the desperate beauty of its desktop wallpaper. Mountains, farms above, oil below, torque in F-150 gear shifts, speed times inertia to the power of error. Convenience stores in mountain time save scowls of the Old West for strangers. It's a little boring. The Stephen King towns are all alike. I don't know how these ones will end, but we've seen poltergeist. All our goods as tribute for the one crane operator with invisible market hand and scaffolds of poured blood, cement from the bone powder of endless conquest, fit for an endless tower, an international space station at the top. I don't know what to pick, let me just say.
I know, it's hard. They're all so good.
I don't entirely agree. There's some that I don't like as much, but I'm not supposed to say which ones I like best or which ones I like least. So I like all my children. I love all my children equally.
There you go.
I'm just going to read one that's a little bit nonsensical, but it was my attempt to transcribe what it feels like to live with generalized anxiety and depression. Sometimes the only way I can cope with it is to write through it. And sometimes trying to describe it, I have to be extremely non-linear and sometimes nonsensical because my mind is a mess. So if I'm trying to write down what it's like in there, anyways, I'll just read that poem. So a finger in the eye should do it. The doc explains the hole in my brain with a purgatory of plastic poppies. I wrote this in November. And you tend to see the plastic poppies. So I was just imagining a storm drain with a bunch of those poppies glommed together and just floating away, and a lot of other silly images from the SkyTrain. So the doc explains the hole in my brain with a purgatory of plastic poppies, a glom, a vortex of exit wounds falling out, planets of fruit wax and their storm drains, a dreamliner of swordsmen falls out, cesium blind drone boys and their elephant foot fall out, housing bubbles, unexpected contraceptive, the cower and triumph of the inadvertent falconer fall out, train cars and white cane folds fall out, mother, riding a Shel Silverstein allegory falls out, the monomania of ferry conductors, their anchors of no strings, their barnacle hooks fall out, gray matter in peristaltic ropes, a bucket of neurotransmitters, an expanded slick of blood falls out. If the mask of the mob be grotesque, how much more what is beneath? What if the accordion of breath be broken? What of the resonance of bridge boots breaking the boombox first? I don't know, but it seems a bit much, doesn't it? Knowing if or that I've died. Will you help me look?
Thank you so much for joining us today, Aimee Parent Dunn and Tolu Oloruntoba. Thank you so much, and congratulations again on your success. Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.